Time for us here today. Well, let's just get your general response to how all that turned out, and then I got some questions about why now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no problem. So, well, really, this all started, I guess, for me back almost 2 years ago. I first started talking about the reduction in the number of seats in the House of Assembly. I felt that we could have a reduction in seats and actually still provide the services to the people in the province and still do a very good job in the legislature. So there was a window of opportunity that actually opened a couple of weeks ago, and so we took a real good look at the legislation and felt that this is something that we would like to see at least given the chance to be successful. We did that. We put our 3 amendments, as you know, Pete, out there on Monday of last week, which dealt with, first of all, the Labrador seats and what would happen after 120 days. We never did want to see this piece of legislation, this commission, be used as a reason that would actually delay the 2015 election. And also around the number of seats, we wanted to have the commission some flexibility in that decision and actually how they redraw the boundaries. So our amendments, I think, are now embedded in the legislation of Bill 42 that was passed last night. So, I think I was very pleased with the outcome that we received this morning.
But how much of a priority is this really? We're talking about $2 million a year. It was set to be triggered next year anyway. Is this something that we should have been opening the House in January to accomplish? And if so, why? What's the big payoff here?
Well, there was certainly lots of people over the last, years really that have spoken out loudly about this. Lots of provinces across the country that have done electoral boundary, review and have reduced the number of seats in their legislatures. So when this, regardless of, if it was 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, whatever, the opportunity was there to save money. And any time we had the opportunity to save that money and put it into frontline services in other areas, I believe it's prudent on us as elected officials to be able to do that.
But is there really no downside to doing this? I mean, really, it looks like with Labrador locked in at 4, presumably with the population increase on the Avalon Peninsula, there won't be any lost here. If anything, there might be more seats on the Avalon Peninsula. And so it's rural Newfoundland, only a certain allowance, 10% margin, the reduction maybe of 2 seats. And there's only a certain allowance, 10% margin, save maybe 2 seats, as the Premier was saying earlier in his discussion with Fred. So, I mean, it's rural island that is going to, I guess, experience this reduction. And of course, for those folks, they already complain about not having enough access or representation as it is.
No, Pete, there's more flexibility than that. There's actually 3 areas where you could add some variances for rural Newfoundland and Labrador. Yes, the 10% plus or minus is there, but there's also a 25% plus minus. But added to that as an amendment last night, there's flexibility even above the 25%. So we could actually see 6 districts in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador even over and above the 25% variance. So there is some flexibility there right now for the Commission to be able to move some of the population numbers around to make that adjustment in rural areas of the provinces. That's extremely important to me and to all of us. As I think, with all 3 political parties, we are very concerned about representation in Newfoundland and Labrador, and very proud to work that I know that our MHAs do. Many of them come from a rural background. We certainly have some from the St. John's area as well. But the work in those rural districts are quite different. But the Commission now will have the flexibility that I believe it needs to make those adjustments, and we'll see where this all turns out in 120 days. I think, Pete, to that, though, it's very important that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians get involved now over the next 4 months and add their say. They will have an opportunity to make presentations to the Commission, and I encourage them to do so.
How might this impact, you've talked about reforms in the past, going toward more committee work, including all-party committees. How might this impact that reform, where you're going to have fewer bodies now to invest in that kind of work?
I don't look at it like that at all, Pete. In my own life, when I the size of the committee structure, I believe MHAs are willing to do this, and they like the committee structure. We've seen that this week for the first time, I guess, since the all-party shrimp meet. You think about what's happened in the last year or so. We've seen an all-party committee on shrimp, and this week we've seen an all-party committee that will be formed for mental health. So these are changes that they're actually evolving right now in the current assembly. But when it comes to overall reform and changes, with MHAs, Pete, I'm on record as well talking about the changes that will come if elected and supported by the people of the province on MHA reform, pension reform as another example. These are all changes that you could expect to see from me as leader, and people across the province are talking all the time about this, and these are issues that they want to see addressed. But in terms of structure, yes, I agree, Pete. If we go down, if the Commission is successful in doing its work, 40 members in the House of Assembly, I believe there's room there to have very functional all-party committees in the House of Assembly.
Okay, in terms of your own party and its preparation for the next election, how does this impact the work you've already done? Clearly, you've got lots of candidates who have been decided, and now you're going to have to go back to the drawing board because some of these districts that they're selected to run as the Liberal candidate are going to change, and you might have 2 or even more individuals vying for the same territory now.
Well, it's all part of the great democratic process within the Liberal Party, open nominations, of course. I have not had a chance to talk to the executive yet. I've been engaged all week with our nominated candidates. They've been part of all of this with us through conference calling and so forth. Many of them have come into the legislature to actually experience firsthand what's happening there. But, this is not about the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. This is really about Newfoundlanders and Labradorians having their say into the democracy within our province. Over the next 4 months, they will certainly have the opportunity to determine where those boundaries are in their own areas. And as a party, we will hit the reset button now, and we will adjust. I'm not at all concerned about that. They're certainly committed to having the party ready for the next election, and these new boundaries will not interfere with that.
Okay, last thing. Does Lorraine Michael have any validity to her statements that she was shunned and blocked out and they weren't really a part of this whole deal-making process that happened over the last number of hours?
Pete, absolutely none. And I'll say this, and I'll finish my statement with this. We put our amendments out there last Monday, and the NDP has never reached out to us to discuss our amendments. Not once. I wrote a letter to the Premier about he expressed an interest in talking about the amendments. We had a series of meetings throughout today, yesterday, and last night, but never once did the NDP reach out to us to discuss our amendments. So it really wasn't about that. If anyone was interested in that engagement, if they had reached out to us about those amendments, we would have been there to include them in all of this. We were only a few feet away. And like in the past, we've worked out with the NDP before. On Wednesday, as an example, prior to the private members' resolution on Wednesday, we had a press release out saying that we would support their all-party committee that they were proposing on Wednesday. So, working together is nothing new to me. When we put amendments out and people want to be engaged, our door is always open.
All right, Mr. Ball, really appreciate your time today, sir. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Pete.
All the best.
Bye-bye.